I'm going to show you how to grade a quiz using a Google form using an add-on called Flubaroo. The first thing you need to do is set up your quiz on a Google form. So I have started a quiz here, and you can see in my quiz I have a place for the student's name, first and last, as well as their class period. That's just for me to help organize it. And I also have a spot for them to put in their email address. And the reason I want their email address is that I can send the quiz response grades to the students. Now, one thing that you may want to do when you have questions such as email address, a lot of times my students will put in just their username and they'll forget to put in their whole email address. And so I can have that form data as they enter it actually check and make sure it's a real email address. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to go into Edit to edit my question, and down here at the bottom it has an Advanced Settings. If you go ahead and click on Advanced Settings, you're going to choose Data Validation, and then I'm going to change it because the email address that they're entering is not a number, they're entering text, and I can say that it is an email address. Now, when students fill out this form, if they do not enter a full email address, it won't let them submit their form. So data validation is a way to allow me to check to make sure students are entering in the right types of answers. This is also great if you have students entering in URLs for websites that they are submitting maybe as an assignment. I'm going to choose Done. And here I have two different questions that I've asked in this quiz. One is a math question where the students will type in their answer as a text answer. And the next one is a multiple choice question. And here you can see I actually inserted in a picture in my Google form, and the question relates to that picture. There's another option with multiple choice forms that's kind of cool. If you're giving students a quiz, maybe you want to mix up those answers so that it's a little harder maybe to cheat or copy. So I'm going to choose Edit, and here in the Advanced Settings, I can actually choose to shuffle the option order when I have multiple choice questions. So I'm going to choose that and press Done. Okay, now that my quiz is complete on the Google form, I'm going to go to the response sheet, and in the response sheet, that is where we're going to run the script. So if I click View Responses, we can see the Google form, and it has a place for the time when the student takes it, their name, period, everything that was on the quiz. To run the quiz to grade the questions, you actually need to have someone answer the quiz first. You also want to create your answer key. So I'm actually going to go back to the quiz, and I'm going to view the live form, and I'm going to type in my answer key. So I'm going to fill out for first name and last name, I'm going to choose key, and then I'm going to fill out the information on this form. Okay, I have all the information filled out correctly for my answer key, so I'm going to press Submit. And now I'm going to pretend that I'm a student, and I'm going to fill out the answers. Alright, now that I have filled out the answer key and we're pretending that students have taken the quiz, I'm going to go into the spreadsheet again, and here is where you can see the results. So I have my answer key as the first answer, or the first form submission, and then I have my student example, but imagine that this was filled out by students. Now to run the script that's going to grade the quizzes, we're actually going to use something called an add-on. They used to be called scripts in the old version of Forms. In the new version of Forms, you can tell we're in the new version because it has this little green check mark. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to add-ons. And when you go to add-ons, if you have any add-ons here, they'll be listed up top. If this is your first add-on that you've added, or that you need to add, you're going to go to Get Add-ons, and you'll see a list of different ones up here, and you can do a search. Flubaroo happens to be the first one here right now, but you can just do a search if it's not there, or you can look down. And when you click on it, I already have this one installed, it says Manage, but if it's one you haven't installed, it will say Free, and it might ask you to authorize it, so you say OK, and then it will be added. Then you're going to go back up to your add-ons, and you're going to choose Flubaroo, and you're going to choose Grade Assignment. Now here it's going to ask you to kind of match up your grading options. So the first name, last name, period, this all identifies a student, and it does a pretty good job of trying to guess what's going on. So identify student, etc. for even email address. Then for the two questions, I can choose how many points I want the questions to be worth. So maybe 6 times 7, I want that question to be 2 points, and how many eggs are in a basket, 1. And then I'm going to choose continue. Now at step 2, it's going to ask us which submission is the answer key. And this is the one that's made by you that we did first. I labeled it answer key. So I'm going to choose select and then continue. Now you can notice that it created a new tab in our sheets, or a new sheet here. And this has our grading information and our percentage. And so I can close this or choose View Grades to see. And my student example got 1 point correct because they got the math incorrect here. And it has emailed grade. Right now I haven't emailed the grade, but I can actually email the grades to the students by going back up to Flubaroo. And I can choose to email the grades. And it will now send an email, and I can include the answer key if I'd like. And I can write in a message to include in the email that the quiz has now been graded. If they didn't do well, I can give a link to where they can go and do some more studying, or I might offer that they could retake the test, but this is a great way to send an email to your students with their grade results. And then if I go back to our screen here, okay, so this was emailed successfully, and it now has an X to tell me that it was emailed. But I can go back to the student submissions and see what they chose when they entered them. Then I can go back to grades to see the average points and get information about the actual quiz. You can use Flubaroo to provide more feedback than just the correct answer choices to students, or whether or not students just got the questions correct or not. So one thing that you can do is add help or hints to each of the different questions so that students know what the correct answer may be or why a certain answer might be wrong. So if you go to add-ons and then choose Flubaroo, you can go to edit help tips. And what that does is it will place an extra row above each of the students' form submissions. And so right here, where it says what is 6 by 7, you can say use a calculator, or you can say, any tips or special hints that you have for students of what they can use to guide them to a correct answer. So I said use a calculator, only count the eggs you can see, not the ones buried at the bottom of the basket. You can have explanations of why certain answers are incorrect. So it's up to you what you place in these categories. Now another option that you can do in the Flubaroo menu is you could edit student feedback. So in the student grade area, right here it says feedback for student optional. So you wouldn't want to use this feedback if you had it set to auto grade. If you had it set to auto grade, you wouldn't have a chance to enter in this feedback. So this would be best used when you control when the email is sent out to students with their actual grade. So here you can type in some feedback like, great job, but practice your times tables. So now, those are two different ways to add feedback. One is just general feedback, but then you could also set up some feedback here, some hints for each of your questions. Now, when I go to when I go to add-ons and Flubaroo and email the grades, it's going to include all of that information. I could even type in some extra notes or a message to include to my students. So this tells me that one grade was successfully emailed. That's because I only had one student response. And if I go to the grades menu, you can see here an email grade, it has an X. If I ever wanted to resend an email, I could just delete that and then it would resend the email. But now I'm going to go over to my email and you're going to see that I have two separate emails. One of them was sent to me as the teacher, and one of them was sent to me as the student. I happen to use the same email address. Here's the email sent to me as a teacher. It just gives me some information about the email that was sent, whether I provided the answer key, what message I included, etc. This is the email that I sent to my students. So this is the email that the student who took the test received. So it said their grade was 1 out of 2, 50%. Quiz retakes on Monday. Your instructor has this feedback for you. Great job, but practice your timetables. That's what I put in that column. Now, for the hints or help for the questions, this is what I put on the first sheet on that extra row, where I have any tips or hints or suggestions, explanations, etc. for my students. And you can see that they see them with the question here.